The Colts got it done on Sunday Night Football against the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead Stadium. What a win, and a statement win, one of the greatest wins for the Colts franchise in regular season in many years. This was one that has shocked and sent ripples around the league. This was the biggest upset of 2019 up to week 5. The Colts were 10.5, 11-point underdogs coming into this game and found a way to keep the ball away from Patrick Mahomes and just run it down Kansas City's throat. And they did that for the vast majority of the day. So many things I liked about this game. So many things stood out to me. There are so many different ways that I could talk about this game. But I think that the most surprising to me is this defense's ability to stand up against everything, against the world. The Chiefs did not have Tyreek Hill or Sammy Watkins or their starting left tackle. The left guard also went out during the game. Zero excuse, of course, but because they still have Patrick Mahomes, they still have Travis Kelce, they still have these, fast wide receivers, and they weren't able to get it done. Patrick Mahomes, aside from some, great throws on the outside when he escaped from the pocket, you know, mostly in the first half when he was not kind of held back a little bit from that ankle injury that everybody wants to keep on talking about. But the Colts were able to do it on defense. They played a lot of man coverage, which I'm a big fan of. And if you've been listening to this podcast, I've been talking about it, especially after the Raiders and the Falcons loss. They were sitting back, and so many times, especially on third downs and key plays, they were just sitting back in a soft zone. And Derek Carr and Matt Ryan just ate them alive all day. And that's what happened for the past 2 weeks. You were able to win against the Falcons, but the defense still didn't look good. This defense, it was the best performance probably by a defense in the NFL this year, to hold Patrick Mahomes to 13 points. Keep in mind, he has not, in his 23 starts with the Kansas City Chiefs, he has not been held under 26 points, and the Colts held him to half of that. That is unbelievable, and it's something that the Colts should be very proud of, and who have just made a complete 180 turn from last week against Oakland. This team is just so hard to gauge, but they're so young right now, and with Frank Reich, he's building these players game by game, and they put that behind him. They put it as fuel to the fire, and they caught Kansas City on their heels. And this Colts defense, I mean, you looked at, and the other biggest question coming into this was that pass rush. It was, non-existent at home against the Falcons or the Raiders. There was no hint of it. I mean, Matt Ryan and Derek Carr had all day in the pocket to throw. We did not see that with Patrick Mahomes on Sunday night. The defensive line was beating the offensive line of the Chiefs at the point of attack, and you saw guys like Justin Houston, Danico Autry, Jabal Sheard, Kamoka Toure, and Grover Stewart getting pressured just all night. And Justin Houston, what a homecoming for him as he gets the sack in the first half. That was probably pretty satisfying. And then the biggest play probably of the game was the 4th down and 1 with about 5 minutes to go, where Justin Houston beats the left tackle and gets Damian Williams in the backfield to get the turnover on downs, which was a huge play that got the Colts inevitably up 2 possessions with the Vinatieri field goal. But the defense showed up. You saw your corners, for the most part. I'm going to give props to all of them. Desir, Kenny Moore, these guys went out for periods of time in the game. You saw, just Quincy Wilson rock. You saw some guys that we don't see very often come into this game. Shaquille Taylor, he was in for a period of time during this. He was kind of a practice squad guy, but getting called against the Chiefs. Khari Willis, what a game from him as he is continuing to grow as Malik Hooker is going to have that extended absence. And I thought a guy that has had a really probably one of the best games on the defense and somebody that has made a complete change from last year's matchup against the Chiefs is George Odom. This was the safety he filled in and played snaps in Malik Hooker's absence against the Chiefs last season and looked completely lost in that game. He was probably one of your worst defenders in that game, probably your worst defender in that game, and now made a complete change. Gets the fumble on LaShawn McCoy after a huge 20-yard gain that would have set him up in the red zone, and punches the ball out there. He gets tackles for loss. He came up and smacked somebody at the line of scrimmage. So George Odom played a very nice game for you, and you're seeing guys. We saw that Malik Hooker and Darius Leonard were out in this game. The Colts' two best defensive players, arguably, and we just thought that there was really no chance unless it was going to be a shootout. Well, credit to this defense, I'm telling you, because I thought coming into this game that they were bottom tier of the NFL as far as defending against the pass. And they've shown today that it's not – this game just doesn't make up for everything that they did last week against Oakland. But it does show their potential and what they can do as a group and against the league MVP and Patrick Mahomes on the road. What a performance. The Colts' backs were against the wall. This is always when the Colts do well is when they're doubted. And, you saw last week that they were, 7-point favorites. And this week, it's so strange, but the Colts found a way to do it. And really just, I think Frank Reich just outcoached Andy Reid today. Andy Reid is a hell of a play caller and one of the better coaches in the league, but Frank Reich is too. And to go for it on those fourth down and shorts, late in the game where it was going to be, a long field goal or a punt and just kind of extending those drives, keeping Mahomes off the field, you were able to do it with that confidence and the swagger of Frank Reich. That's another thing that stood out to me. And the defensive play calling of Matt Eberflus, of course, it just all tied into a all-around great performance, offense, defense, special teams, you name it. That's what it had to take to beat Kansas City, and they were able to pull it off today from every phase of the game. And that's what makes it so satisfying to watch. This team just came together, when everything and everybody was against them. Watching the pregame, and every single person picked the Kansas City Chiefs, including Tony Dungy, to win. And the Colts dominated this game. That they didn't score that many points, only 19 points, but they weren't trying to necessarily score quick. They were wanting to. Frank Reich said after the game that he wasn't necessarily trying to keep the ball away from Patrick Mahomes, but that's just what happened. That's what happened in the game. Marlon Mack found his stride. He finishes with over 132 yards on 29 carries. And just he's showing right now how he is becoming an elite running back. This offensive line is probably historic and is going to be historic when it's all said and done. But you've got to find a guy to run behind them. And Marlon Mack, we saw the patience of him, and he would just stand behind the offensive line, bounces. You watch his footwork, his feet. He's bouncing through holes, cutting through. There was one that set up the early touchdown where in the first quarter where he was bouncing behind, and Quentin Nelson on the left side really had a nice chip block. Then he cut back on the linebacker, freeing open Marlon Mack, who just was patient enough to wait for that hole and then saw the crease and took off through the middle of the field. And I thought he was going to be gone, but he was caught around the 5-yard line or so. But it was a complete game. And Marlon Mack deserves his credit, as we didn't know if he was going to be in this game. He had the ankle injury that was kind of questionable all week. He did practice a little bit, and along with Ty. Ty was, even his presence is huge on the field. Of course, he only had 4 catches for 37 yards, but I felt like every one of his catches, aside from like maybe one screenplay that went for nothing, they were meaningful. And you needed him to draw the double teams at times, and that kind of freed guys like Jack Doyle, open a little bit. And you didn't see a whole lot in the passing game, as Jacoby Brissett only finished with 51 yards passing, with the one interception, which was a bad throw. That was probably, well, I will say, his worst interception of the year. Nah, last week against the Raiders, his second worst interception of the year, as he just didn't see the honey badger there, kind of sitting back in the zone coverage, just an easy read. But that was just his one bad play, and he put it behind him, and it didn't make any more of those throws for the rest of the game, and just allowed for this running attack to win you the football game. And that's exactly what Marlon Mack did behind this offensive line, who is just getting so much praise right now, and as they should, as the Colts had the ball for 37 minutes total of time of possession, in the Chiefs for 22 minutes. And keeping Patrick Mahomes off the field like that, that's how you limit them to only 13 points, And we saw this Chiefs team last week against the Lions. We saw them, they were vulnerable. And I was watching that game, and they, aside from a Kerryon Johnson fumble at the goal line, the Lions were probably going to win that game, and the Chiefs managed to still score 34 points. But this week it was no fluke. It was no, wow, that's some crazy luck from the Colts. No, they methodically did this. This was schematic. Frank Reich said in his post-game press conference that this is how they were feeling all week, that he just had this feeling. You hear guys say that, you hear coaches say that. When Frank Reich says that, and you saw the way that he talked about it, and I thought that he was very descriptive in it, and I believe him. I think that they're coming together as a team, even at practice, and it's showing on Sundays. And that's so important for this group, as now they're moving into the bye week. They're going to be able to get healthy, and you're a 3-2 football team. Really should be 4-1. I'm going to say they should have lost against the Raiders. It was a bad game. Should have beat the Chargers in overtime in Los Angeles. But what a performance, and one of the best regular season games that I can remember in recent history from the Colts. Just given everything, with Luck being out and being so many guys down on defense, and not knowing coming into this year, if you had a shot to be a playoff contender, and now you beat the undefeated Kansas City Chiefs on the road at Arrowhead, and this now they're tied with the Houston Texans atop of the AFC South, and they play the Texans. And actually, the Chiefs play the Texans next week, which is a good thing, because I'm sure the Chiefs are going to want to bounce back, and the Texans are just going to be in their way. And the Colts will play the Texans at home following their bye week. So they're in control of their own destiny right now. They got it done against Kansas City. They got some help with some losses in the division with the Titans and the Jags. But you're right now, you're in the driver's seat. You're 3-2 at the bye. The Colts were 1-5 to start the year last year, and now to be 3-2 without Andrew Luck, Jacoby Brissett, and this defense who has been depleted, it's unbelievable. So I'm super happy to see it, and we're going to continue to see how this Colts team forms. But just what a game from Indianapolis, and have shown right now their true value as an organization, and they're going to come in and make some noise in the AFC and are a legitimate playoff contender right now. And there was so much negativity. I could go back to my last podcast that I posted on YouTube, and there were so many negative comments about the Colts players, and um, something that is sucks to see. I think that Colts fans, we really need to be optimistic, and not so pessimistic, because this team is capable of stuff like this. And I said coming in to this game, I said that the Colts should come in with a lot of confidence. Um, they're a good young football team, and some of you guys thought that I was stupid for saying that, but I believe in this football team, and I think that they can do great things. And they just beat the former league MVP and Kansas City Chiefs on the road, in a unbelievable Sunday night football game, which was great to highlight a great Sunday of football, where you saw some good things around the league. Um, and yeah, so the Colts will now head into the bye week. I wanted to keep this one pretty short, just kind of a post game reaction to this. And this is coming out on Monday morning. I normally do them on Sunday, but we were celebrating last night following the Colts win on Sunday Night Football. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll come out with a podcast a little later this week with some more analysis of the Chiefs game, as we can savor this one for a couple weeks leading into the Texans game. Then I'll probably come out with one podcast next week I'll come out with one podcast this week, and then normal schedule next week for the preview and the post game. So thank you so much for listening, and just a great Colts win. I'm so happy about this one. We could savor this one, like I said, for a couple weeks, and I hope it has you guys smiling early on a Monday morning. Thanks so much for listening to this podcast. Like and subscribe if you haven't, and I will be talking to you in the next one. Thanks.